All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and today for episode 30, all right, I'm going to take off these broken-ass glasses. Today for episode 30, we're going to be going live with my guy, John Kelly, to break down UFC Paris. So it's been an off week. I'm hyped to be back. John, thank you for coming on, man. How was your break? Are you hyped for this card?
I am hyped for this card. For starters, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm a big fan of the day cards because I'm an old man basically, so I like to go to bed by like 10 o'clock when I can. So having a noon start time is amazing to me. And it's funny you mentioned the broken glasses. Like I can join you because my daughter snapped off one of these on my blue light glasses.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I thought that was funny that you whipped those out. But yeah,
Literally
man, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited though. It's a fun slate. I mean, I think dogs are going to be barking here. A couple props I like that I'm sure we'll get into as well. But yeah, excited to break down the card with you.
Yes, sir. Honestly, I'm probably actually, no, I think I am on a bunch of dogs again, but we can get right into it. So for this first fight, we've got a short notice replacement and a debutant at the same time. We've got Ailin Perez versus Stephanie Eggar. Perez is 7-1-0. She's 27 years old, 5'5", 66-inch reach. And for her camp, I've got United MMA. And then on the other side, we've got Stephanie Eggar. Eggar's 7-3-0, 34 years old. So she's 7 years older here. 5'6". She's an inch taller, 68-inch reach. So she's got a 2-inch reach advantage. And she is training at a buddy gym, coming off of that really weird fight with Silva. I was personally on Eggar. I didn't know what to think. I didn't see a tap. Nobody saw a tap except that one judge. But I can't argue. Were you on anyone there, John?
I didn't track anything there. I didn't have any official bet. It was like a last minute thing. Otherwise, I would have tracked it. But very late, I got on Mayra Bueno Silva.
Nice.
I think it was around a pick'em or something like that. Or I better scorecards, no action. It was something super late, like as the card was starting. So I didn't tip it. But yeah, I mean, obviously had to run pretty good with the weird tap. But I mean, we don't have to spend a bunch of time on it. I think it was very odd the way that Eggar reacted, like if she actually didn't tap, because she was just kind of like
waiting to see what would happen, right?
Yeah, just stood there like an idiot. So I mean, it is what it is. I think in this matchup, I'm not looking to lay the chalk with her at minus 280 or whatever she's at.
It's
especially
lower now, I think.
Yeah, especially recently, like in women's MMA specifically, it's like these dogs, I mean, even when they don't win, which a lot of them have been coming through lately, but even when they don't, they're just fighting a lot closer fights. Like, I mean, we just saw it on Dana White Contender Series. I was pretty confident in Silva, who was a big favorite, and Judakova just clearly leveled up and was able to outmuscle her, which I think was the most surprising thing. So I bring that up just because it's like, do I think Eggar's better? Yes. I think Perez has fought mostly bums on the regional scene. You know, she seems to have a little bit of a ground game as well, but obviously Eggar comes from a high-level judo background. She's a pretty decent submission grappler as well. So I think Eggar's more skilled. It's just the fact that, especially more so recently, I'm trying to put less weight into the actual skill, especially in low-level women's MMA. So, I mean, I don't hate people taking the shot on the underdog here. It's one that I'm probably just looking to pass. Best lean, I'd say, is probably on the overs, just because if both of them do end up being decent grapplers here, I think the over 2.5 is like around even money or something like that. So that's actually not a bad look.
Yeah, you can get plus 100 on Caesars. I don't hate that either. Me personally, like, so I went into this. I've been on the dogs a lot lately. I love it. We've been on a great trend. And I went into this, I was like, all right, I'm going to find a reason to bet Perez. You look at Eggar, like, she hasn't been that impressive even in her wins, like against Shauna Young, right? You look at the numbers, Shauna Young outstruck her at distance, right? So I went into it. I really wanted to back Perez, big, strong woman. It's just, I don't see it, man. I hear a lot about her striking, and like, I don't really think it's that great. I don't think that Eggar is an amazing striker either, but I just think that she's better. And then in the grappling, right, it's just pretty basic. You watch some of her fights against Vidal, for example. She was being held against the fence. Like, if that happens against Eggar, she's going for a trip, right? She's going to get thrown. So I kind of like Eggar. I was thinking like maybe Eggar inside the distance, but I don't like that. It's plus 115. Like, I feel like that's not good enough. And then I put honestly at minus 243. I don't think it's terrible. I ended up parlaying her like a square. Parlayed her with Ciryl Gane. Couldn't get more square than that one. And parlayed her with Abu also, who we'll talk about later on today. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little nervous. I guess maybe she can get taken down, kind of like maybe if you're thinking like a Tracy Cortez situation, but I personally just don't really see it. So I'm probably favored her pass here. Has a single MMA media member asked Eggar if she actually tapped? That's a good question, honestly. I haven't heard anything other than just random media articles afterwards, but we can move on to another interesting matchup. Here we've got Khalid Taha versus Cristian Quinonez. Taha's 13-4-0, 29 years old, 5'5" with a 69-inch reach, and I've got him training out of Universum Fit Gym. And then on the other side, you've got Quinonez. Quinonez is 16-3-0, 26 years old, 5'7", so he's 2 inches taller, 70-inch reach. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is training out of Entram Gym. I believe Moreno was at his Contender Series fight, so probably close to them. But yeah, I'll start this one off. I came into it thinking I was probably going to be on Taha. I'm not. I'm a bit of I'm wary of the whole Contender Series fade thing, but there's definitely, makes sense. The fade makes sense, and there's a reason behind it. These guys coming in off the Contender Series, they tend to be a bit less experienced. Even if they get an impressive win on the Contender Series, sometimes it's against a guy who's like just not good. So I normally do look to fade them if there's an angle. I just feel like here he's longer, stronger, younger. And if we're going to be striking the entire time, I'm going to be on Quinonez. And I don't think anyone's wrestling here. I certainly don't think Taha's going to be wrestling. And Quinonez, maybe he can mix it in. But like, if you're looking at Taha's record and thinking he can get taken down because of that, look at who they were, right? Like Sergey Morozov is a completely different wrestler compared to Quinonez, right? But I do think we're going to be on the feet probably the entire fight. And if we are, I got to favor the taller, longer fighter who's also younger and who I can think is just as good of a striker, if not better. John, what are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, so this is a fight that I'm actually very excited about. I have multiple bets on this fight. Maybe it's just because I love losing money on Khalid Taha. I'm always betting this dude's knockout props. Like we're getting them at good numbers in most of his fights too. But you hit on the main thing. It's like he's finally gonna get a fight that I think he wants in terms of stylistically. Like a lot of these guys that he fought, not only were they pretty decent fighters, but they were all primarily grapplers, guys that were able to take him down, control him, take the power out of his sails to a degree. So it's like now he's finally getting a guy that's primarily a striker, like you mentioned. And yes, Quinonez, he has shown the ability to land takedowns at times, but he's not like an aggressive wrestler. And I'd be surprised if he's able to hold Taha down, if he can even get him to the ground. So I do expect to see a striking match here. Quinonez is more of a, dance around the outside, pump that jab, low calf kicks, pretty rudimentary striker. Whereas Khalid Taha, I think, is going to be the one moving forward, being very aggressive. And we know he's going to swing heavies. I mean, this dude is very, very powerful. It's just because we haven't seen his power connect really lately, just because he's always being held down due to the matchups. Like I really think this is a buy low spot for him, not just on the money line, but in the prop market as well. So basically the way that I played this was I bet him by knockout at plus 420 on FanDuel. I took what they can give me there. I bet him first round knockout at 10-1, absurd line. I mean, Quinonez, it's not that I think he has a durability issue, but the style that he fights, somebody's going to chin this guy pretty soon. I don't know if it's Taha. I certainly hope it is, but 10-1 for a guy that I think is going to move forward and swing heavies against a guy that I don't really think is going to look to immediately take him down and just grind on him. So I'm going to take the shot there. So I actually maxed that as well. And then I also bet the under 2.5 at plus 158 for a little bit over a unit. But basically I just think Taha stylistically is a fighter that does dictate unders more so than not. And I think, like I said, we haven't really seen it just because of the matchups. And, styles make fights. He's getting a fight that I think he wants here. And I think Quinonez is a banger enough to give him the fight that he wants. I know Quinonez's last couple fights went to decision, but, I taped this guy extensively on Contender Series coming into last season. And up until his last few recent fights, like this guy was typically, a killer be killed style fighter himself. So I think he could get baited into a brawl here. So the under at plus money, I think is pretty good. So like I said, I bet that at plus 158 and took the 2 knockout stabs on Khalid Taha. I don't even hate the money line. Like I considered betting his money line at all as well. Now that it's down to like a pick 'em over on Bet Online, I think he's minus 111. Some of the other books haven't caught up to it yet, but I know that was a long rant, but I just think it's a really good buy low spot on Taha, and I'm just looking to capitalize.
Now, you definitely have a bunch of things pointing that way, man. Like Quinonez, 2 losses by KO, right? Like you said, we're going to be on the feet. I'm on Quinonez. I got a money line also at, I think I played him at like plus 108 or something like that, somewhere along those lines. But I definitely see what you're saying. Like, I think that I kind of like the under that you were talking about, the under 2.5 for plus 158. I wasn't looking at it before, but I feel like that's a good spot. Because like I said, we're going to be on the feet, right? Power puncher and Taha. Quinonez is also a really good striker. So I might hop on with you over there, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say is like, it is a nice little way to hedge. Like I really do think this fight is going to be a banger. So it's not like Taha is indestructible, with how reckless he gets. So at least if Quinonez ends up winning and your bet comes through, at least I'll hit the under and it'll pay back the knockout props.
At least we could both win, right? But yep. John, I have a DFS question for you if you don't mind.
Yeah,
would you say this is a fight to target maybe?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like I said, Taha, I think in general, the dude is a boom or bust style of fighter, but I'm always like, I only play tournaments these days on DraftKings, so I'm only looking for the upside. And a guy like Taha, that's the guy that you want to target. And I'm not going to completely ignore the upside of Quinonez either. I just think Taha, if either guy winning, I think Taha would have more of a ceiling, if that makes sense, just because I think the early knockout would favor the Taha side.
Makes sense to me. But all right, let's move on to this next one. This one should be a lot of fun. We've got Benoit Saint-Denis versus Gabriel Miranda. Saint-Denis 9-1-0. He's 26 years old, 5'11", 73-inch reach, and I have him training out of Fitness Park Vitry, but that's with a question mark because I'm not positive. John, if you know any better, let me know, brother. And on the other side, we've got Miranda, 16, 5-0, 32 years old. So he's 6 years older, 5'11" as well. We do not have a reach, and he's training out of MMA Masters. And he is a short notice replacement. I believe Benoit Saint-Denis was supposed to fight Christos Giagos. That was going to be a max bet for me for Saint-Denis. So I was kind of upset that fight got canceled. Hopefully they'll remake it if he wins. But yeah, John, I'll let you start this one.
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident on the Saint-Denis side. I just think he's the more proven fighter. Like, this guy is not terrible. Like, I know coming into the UFC, there was a lot of question marks. Like, he seems to just take guys down, submit them, hasn't really faced a ton of, stiff competition. He comes from like I believe it's a French special forces background. So shout out to the military background, my guy, Saint-Denis. But I just think he's a much more proven fighter than this guy Miranda. And that's what it comes down to for me is this guy, Gabriel Miranda, I think is basically like a watered down version of Saint-Denis. Like, he's definitely more of a guard player, doesn't really have much in the striking, looking to really just catch you with something off his back, catch you in a scramble, snatch up your neck. I just think Saint-Denis is polished enough and, decent enough on the mat to not get caught in something like that. And in terms of the striking, I think he's the better striker. I think he's much more durable as well. And I think he's much more likely to be spending time in dominant position here. So I think Saint-Denis probably finishes him. I think Miranda's a bit of a fraud. Padded record. Guys fought really nobody. And I know I think you had a tweet earlier in the week about speaking to his record as well. So it's like guys like that, I don't put a lot of stock into. But in terms of DraftKings, like, those are guys that are likely not going to see much ownership. And could he theoretically catch an early sub, like a meme style sub? Absolutely. Like, that's not something I'm banking on, but you always kind of have to recognize the upside. It's like where I don't think this fighter wins, but if they win, they could potentially break the slate. So I'm going to have shares of both guys, but definitely more confident on Saint-Denis, your boy.
Yeah, I'm on Saint-Denis too, obviously. You were mentioning what I posted on Twitter. So I was looking at their records, and Miranda, he's got 15 wins, right? He's fought in this promotion, Face the Danger 7 times, and this other one, AFT, twice. Face to Danger was the most recent one. He's got 2 fights there in 21. And both of them are flagged on Tapology. I've never even seen this before until now. I didn't know that they even do this, but Tapology, I guess, flags a promotion when it's like super clear that they're padding fights. And like, I wanted to know like to what extent that is. And I was like looking at the promotion and it's so crazy, man. They're like putting 9-0 guys with like 0-8 guys. Like it's so clear as day that they're just setting people up. So already you can't trust his record, right? If you're telling me that out of his 15 wins, 9 of them are in promotions that are setting him up to win, like already I want nothing to do with him. He's shown absolutely no striking in his fights, like 0. His takedowns, like he's a sub guy, but his wrestling sucks too. So what is he going to do? He has to sub him off his back or he's not going to get anything, in my opinion. So I ended up parlaying Saint-Denis. This is a parlay heavy card for me. I used to be a huge round robin guy, John. I don't know if you knew this, but I used to love round robins. It was essentially the only way I used to bet. I would just money line. If it was a big favorite, underdog, I didn't care. Just round robined it. I've kind of moved away from that nowadays, but when I see a big chalky card where I'm only mostly on favorites, I tend to parlay them up again. So I did parlay Saint-Denis. I think the total stake is like 5 units or something like that. So I'm going to be nervous in round number 1, but if we get out of there, I think I'm going to be a bit more comfortable. So Saint-Denis is definitely my pick as well, and we can move on to another banger, honestly, an absolute banger. We've got Nassourdine Imavov versus Joaquin Buckley. Imavov is 11-3-0, 26 years old, 6'3", 75-inch reach, training out of MMA Factory. And then Buckley on the other side is 15-4-0, 28 years old, 5'10", so he's given up, what is that? 5 inches in height, 76-inch reach. So he's actually got the reach advantage here. And I couldn't find a camp for him. So we're going to go with Finney's hit squad. But I do know that he moves around a lot. He does a lot of cross training. So that's good for Buckley. I'll start this one off. And I'll just say right away, I am on Imavov. I did get him at a much better line. I played a money line at -180 when the line first dropped. I thought that was great. I feel like now it's getting a little crazy, but I still understand why, right? Like you look at Imavov, his last 2 wins are over striker. I guess Ian Heinisch isn't a striker, but his last win over Shabazian, like that's a good striker. And he really showed how good he is there. And I bet against him there. So he proved me wrong that time. And then the fight before that, Heinisch, fantastic performance also. And Buckley, on the other hand, like I also think highly of Buckley. I've been a Buckley truther since like he made his UFC debut and got knocked out by Holland. I backed Buckley there. I backed Buckley against Impa Kasanganay. I backed Buckley literally in I think every single fight except the Dariah fight I bet against him, and that ended up costing me. And like there's a lot to like about Buckley, right? First of all, he's got that dog in him. Second,
there you go.
He's so explosive. Like the way he just like closes the distance and just starts bopping you with strikes. Like it's so good. It's so clean. His hands are super fast. He clearly has power, mixes it up really well. I will say he's a bit one-dimensional in that he doesn't throw a lot of kicks. Now you can laugh because like he literally knocked out Impa Kasanganay with one of the nicest kicks ever, but like it's just not really what he does. He's mostly using his hands. And like he can also mix in wrestling sometimes, but I don't think that's going to be happening here. I just think that if we're on the feet, I have to favor Imavov. Buckley's live for a KO, I guess, at any point, but I just don't think it's that likely. So I am on the Imavov side. John, what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I really don't have a ton to add. I'm right there with you. I think Imavov kind of just has Buckley covered. And, you mentioned it. Buckley, he's obviously got the power, right? Like, I mean, clearly his best chance to win is to land something heavy against Imavov. I just think Imavov is much cleaner striker, stays pretty sound defensively. Like, I guess you can say, well, maybe Buckley can try to land takedowns here. I don't even think he'll have much success if he comes in trying to do that either. So I just think Imavov is the more skilled fighter in multiple areas. And outside of like, Buckley being able to catch him with something, which I think is a pretty low probability here, I think Imavov gets his hand raised. So at -180, I think is when you said you got in. I think that's a good bet.
Yeah, I'm thinking about prop wise. I'm thinking maybe a round 3 KO. Because if you remember, Buckley lost round 3 to who? Abdul Razak Al Hassan of all people. Yeah. So like, and Imavov, you look at the Phil Hawes fight, for example, round 3, he was killing the guy. He was fresh. He was letting it rip. And like, he was hurting Phil Hawes every time he landed. So I am thinking about playing that round 3 prop. I honestly don't even know what it is. I have a feeling that the bookies are onto it. Round 3 KO.
I mean, you could always count on FanDuel for being off a little bit.
It's
so
amazing.
I would look there first.
Plus 1,400.
There you
Not
go.
bad. It's actually not FanDuel. I think it's Bet Rivers. Yeah. FanDuel doesn't have a lineup yet, so I bet it'll be even better. But that's probably what I'm looking at prop wise for this fight. But we can move on. And we've got, I'm going to be saying this all night. We got another banger. Fares Ziam versus Michal Figlak making his debut. Ziam is 12-4-0, 25 years old, 6'1", 75-inch reach. And I have him training out of, I don't have a note. So we're going to go. I don't think it's Icon either. John, do you know where Ziam trains?
Not off the top, no.
All right, yeah, we'll go with Icon for now because that's all we have. And then Figlak is undefeated, 8-0, 26 years old, 1 year older, 5'10", giving up 3 inches in height. We do not have a reach. And I have him training out of Trojan Free Fighters. So, John, I think it's your turn. Start us off, man.
Yeah, I think that might be right for Ziam. I'm not positive, though. So Ziam, wasn't he, I believe he was cut by the UFC, and then they re-signed him for this
I
fight.
didn't know that until I saw the roster watch tweet. I had no idea.
Well, that's what I'm going by as well. So I'm assuming that was accurate. But yeah, I mean, I think Ziam is a guy that I've never been super high on. You know, he comes from a high-level striking background, but, you know, you watch his UFC fights, you can't really tell, right? Like, he's technical for sure, but, like, the guy doesn't have much outside of a jab. Like, that's basically all he does. He's not going to throw in volume, very low volume on the feet. He's very sound, technically speaking, but just doesn't have a ton of power, doesn't have a ton of volume. And the defensive grappling is always an issue. Like, that's plagued him throughout his career. And obviously against Terrence McKinney, that was just, I mean, zero resistance. And that was when I finally started to think that maybe he was coming around on his grappling. You know, we saw a little bit of improvements against Jamie Malarkey, where he was able to reverse him. I think he even got to mount in that fight briefly. So, I mean, I thought that he was improving a little bit. And then it's like McKinney takes him down, insta-subs him, GG. And then, so now in this matchup, this Figlak kid, I think he's pretty good. 8-0 prospect, fighting out of Cage Warriors. I think he probably was going to get a title shot, or maybe he was getting one or something like that. I think he would have been a Cage Warriors champion, similar to my guy Paddy Pimblett before coming over to the UFC. But I think this kid's got a bright future. You know, he seems to be a pretty well-rounded prospect, solid striking, does get a little bit of reckless on the feet. So I think like a sharp counter striker might be able to make him pay. I just don't think Ziam has the power. Like, even if he does land a couple counters, I don't think it's going to be enough to hurt Figlak. And then Figlak, I think, could also land takedowns here. We've seen him land takedowns on the regional scene. I don't think he has any wins by submission, but the guy is a pretty solid grappler from what I've seen, and the takedowns should be there against Ziam. So it's like, I think he's probably going to be the more aggressive fighter, landing more volume. And I think he's got the wrestling and the grappling in his back pocket. So I know it's a kind of a steep price tag to pay for a debutant fighter, but I think it's warranted considering the matchup. So give me the young kid in Figlak to get his hand raised.
Yeah, man, I'll say this: the real winners in this fight are the guys who got Figlak at like -110 or pick him, whatever it opened at. Because that was
thing.
Yeah, that's what it opened at, and it kind of sat there for a sec too. And I was like looking at it. I didn't know Figlak. We were getting our off week finally, so I was like, nah, fuck that. I'm not looking at that. And now look at the line. I wish I looked, but
that's wild, dude. I mean, that literally like blew my mind. I did not know that.
Yeah, they opened up, I think,
-110 bet online. It got bet immediately to -200.
But yeah, like I definitely get the Figlak love. If it was pick'em, I'd probably be on Figlak as well.
Oh yeah.
I just feel like at these odds, you know, there's still a lot of questions. You're looking at Figlak, a debutant, short notice, I believe. This fight was made like pretty randomly, I think, once they lost like half the card. And, you know, he hasn't exactly been tested yet. We don't know how he's going to do under the bright lights. UFC Paris, first Paris event, should be a big thing. Nerves, you know. And then at the same, also like Ziam, he has not been impressive. Like you, John, I've never been a big Ziam truther. I think I've bet against him every single fight. And I don't love a lot what he does. He's very low output. I hate when guys who are strikers are low output, because then how are you going to win the fight?
Yep.
Like, if you're not going to grapple and then you're only throwing nice counters, like, you're not going to win. So that's been my issue with Fares Ziam. But, you know, I got to address some of the wrestling stuff. You know, I'm a huge McKinney guy, so maybe I'm just blinded with my love for him. but I think his wrestling's like elite, like really high level. And I don't blame Ziam much for that loss. I personally don't. And then the Malarkey loss, I mean, the Malarkey win, but when he was getting taken down like 5 or 6 times, like that was a more questionable performance. But I did like to see that he was shooting too. He got a takedown, which was kind of crazy. But I think there is a lot to like. He has a really good jab. He uses that length well. If he just picks up the output a little bit, which I know I'm asking for a lot, but if he does, I think that he's super alive here. I do think that he can keep the fight up on the feet. You know, Figlak is a good grappler, but it's not his bread and butter. He appears to like striking more. Normally, that's what he's doing. I think it's going to be a close fight, but if you're giving me Ziam as a pretty hefty underdog, what is it now? Plus 180 even. I got plus 160. I think at this point, if you like Ziam, just wait because it looks like it's just going down the other way. But I think that Ziam's live. I think that he could win this fight. If the fight ends inside the distance, I think it's more than likely Figlak who's winning. But if we go to the decision, I think that Ziam's very live. So I am on Ziam for a unit at plus 160. I definitely understand the other side. I just don't think it's really playable at like minus 210 now. So,
yep.
But we can move right along. All right. Here we've got Dustin Stolzfus versus Abu Magomedov. Stolzfus is 14-4-0, 30 years old, 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach. Abu on the other side is 24-4-1. He's 32 years old, 6'2", 78-inch reach, so he's 2 inches taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's training out of UFD gym. And Stolzfus, I didn't mention it, but he's at Syndicate MMA. So I'll start this one off. I got to see Stolzfus fight in his last fight against Dwight Grant live. That was dope. Bet on him there. I remember it was kind of one of those big Twitter splits where everybody was on each side, and that was a nice win. He did good, but it also showed some limitations for me, and it made me a lot more comfortable with my bet here because I do think that Abu has him covered literally everywhere. I think that in the grappling, he's covered. I think in the striking, he's covered. He's the better striker. He's got a better jab. He's got 10 knockout wins, good combinations. He's very technical. It can get a bit loopy and like funky looking, but it works and it's good. Stolzfus, you know, it's just very meat and potatoes, I would say. Like, that's the best way to describe it. It's just very basic. He does what he needs to get it to the ground. He's more of a grappler. And, like, he's good. I don't think it's enough to win this fight. And I do like Magomedov. He's a hefty favorite as well. It's like, what is it now? Minus 270 and climbing. I do have him parlayed up for, like, 5 units as well. He's one of those, one of my square parlay pieces. But I just really do think that he has Stolzfus covered. And like, I just don't see how Stolzfus is going to win this. What are you thinking, John?
Yeah, you said you bet Stolzfus last time out against Dwight Grant, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so did I. So shout out to us, cashed him at like plus 140 or whatever. But honestly, like, he was trying his best to give that fight away. Like, that was like almost like a layup matchup. Like, I honestly thought like he should have blown out Dwight Grant there, and I think he probably could have. And it's like, just watching him, you're like, I mean, even winning the bet, I'm like, why did I put money on this guy? Like, honestly, like, I don't think he's any good. Like, his striking is very, very basic. Like you said, like, he's basically just like a leg kicker, but not even like overly powerful, doesn't have a ton of volume, doesn't really have much power in the hands. And then you said it, like, the guy's primarily a grappler, but it's not even like he's that good of a submission grappler either. And it's when he can't land the takedowns, he just has no clue what to do. Like, if he can't get his grappling going, there is zero backup plan. And like, even in that last fight against Grant, where he did have success grappling when he went to it, it was like, he still made it sketchy. Like, it was like, he looked slow. He looked like his cardio was no good. And this is a guy that I think has been finished in round 3 multiple times. Like, so that's probably an issue for him, you know, going a full hard 15 minutes. Like, I don't really see where he has advantages here. And it's not that I put a ton of trust. Definitely not as much trust as you do in the Magomedov side. And there's other people that do as well. So, I mean, it's like a common consensus, I'd say. The only concern I'd have, you know, making a big bet on him is just like, I'd want to see a little bit more. Like, the guy's been pretty inactive. Like, I know he previously fought in PFL, KSW most recently, but the guy has only had like a couple fights over the last, like 3 or 4 years. So, and he's not young. I'll put it that way. I don't think he's old, but I'm just saying, like, as we age and then a long layoff. Like there is some concern there. UFC debut as well. But going back to the opponent, it seems like he should be able to win this fight, and then maybe we get a better fade spot later.
Agreed. All right, so let's move on. This is probably the biggest split that I've seen so far in the MMA sphere. We've got Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood. Jourdain's 13-5-1, 26 years old, 5'9", 69-inch reach, and I've got him training out of Sherbatov Gym. Nathaniel Wood on the other side is 18-5-0, 29 years old, 5'6", 69-inch reach as well, training out of Great Britain Top Team, and this is his second fight at 145 in the UFC. So, John, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I'm probably on the less popular side on this one. I haven't bet anything yet, so I'll say that, but I do like Nathaniel Wood here, and I think, yeah. See, I
thought you were going to say
Jourdain. Most people I know really like Jourdain here. So I know it's not going to be a popular pick, but I like Nathaniel Wood, and it could just be because I've always kind of been a Nathaniel Wood guy, but I think the kid's super impressive, and it's not that Jourdain isn't either. Like basically you give me plus 120 on either of these guys, and I think there's probably a little bit of value there just based on the way that they match up. But I think specifically on the Wood side is like, Jourdain's a great striker. Yeah. And he's going to push a high pace, but Wood is going to match that pace. This is a guy is super high volume. He actually averages more significant strikes landed per minute than Jourdain does. And then on top of that, if either guy's going to get off with the grappling at all, I think it would be Nathaniel Wood here. He averages over 1 takedown per 15 minutes. We know Jourdain historically can't defend takedowns. He defends at like 51%. And that's really been his issue is like, you look at all of his losses in the UFC, he's been taken down multiple times in all of those losses. That is a big leak in his game that I don't think he's shored up yet. Even as recently as what was it? Who did he
Burgos.
just fight? Yeah, Shane Burgos, which I mean, I kind of thought he won that fight, and I had Burgos that cashed a parlay for me that night.
Me too,
but yeah, I mean, that was super. I mean, my buddies who tail me, they're like text me, they're like, I can't believe we got it. I was like, dude, I don't know. I guess New York judging, but yeah, I mean, that's still clearly a leak in his game is like he can't defend takedowns. He's not a terrible submission grappler, but if he's being controlled, then he really has to take advantage of those minutes when the fight does play out at space. And I'm just not sure he's going to be able to do that convincingly against Nathaniel Wood. This guy's a very impressive striker. He's got a great jab. He's got some nasty low calf kicks. Like I'm not looking to fade a guy who moving up to 145. I think this is the right weight class for him. I know the durability has always kind of been an issue. He's been knocked out multiple times, been finished in like 4 of his 5 professional losses. But part of that was from the tough weight cut at 135. Back at 145, I mean, he put a beating on Charles Rosa, which I know is like, yeah, Charles Rosa doesn't really have much except like some grappling tricks and karate kicks. But I mean, the way Nathaniel Wood looked in that fight was very impressive to me. And I just think this kid's still getting better. And so it's like, if I think the striking, both guys are going to push a pace, both guys are going to have pockets of success, and then Wood could potentially land a takedown or two that could swing rounds. You're giving me that guy at plus 120 in that area. I'm probably going to take the shot. So like I said, I haven't bet it yet just because I think there's more sentiment love on the Jourdain side. So I'm hoping to get a little bit better of a price on Wood. But yeah, I like Nathaniel Wood here.
Yeah, man. So honestly, I felt that it was Wood that was the more popular side, at least from what I've been seeing.
Oh, really?
I've seen so much Wood love, and a lot of it is so much. It's like based on this grappling, on this apparent grappling edge that he has. But like, we have to recognize Nathaniel Wood is 5'6". Like, I think he's a bit undersized for this weight class. I know that you were saying you think he's better at featherweight. I don't know, man. For me, it's like, I still have to see because I do think he's really undersized, and I'm a huge like believer in size bullying. Like I think that's a really real thing. And like you look at the Burgos fight, like for Jourdain, and I feel like that showed a lot like a lot of good, even though he lost that fight. Like you said, I think he probably won. At worst, He should have gotten a draw. And I just feel like his takedown defense is improving. He showed that in that fight. I think Burgos went 2-7. It's not like Burgos is some crazy wrestler, but like neither is Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood's primarily a striker. That's what he does best. And that last fight against Rosa, you're right. He looked amazing. I was watching that fight like 2 days ago, and I couldn't believe it. Like the combos, the output, the speed, like he just wouldn't let up. Like just wouldn't. I just don't think that Jourdain's going to be as easy of an opponent to do that to. And then with the size, the striking of Jourdain, I just think that over 3 rounds, I got to go with the bigger guy who's got more power, in my opinion, and who I think is, I can't call him a better striker, but I think it's about even. I would call it about even. And if we go later on, I kind of favor Jourdain. So I am on Jourdain. I played him. I think I did minus 135 for 2 units. I think that's what I did. I can't blame for anyone for betting Wood for sure. I don't know. The size for me, that's the hurdle I can't get over, but I definitely see the argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fight. I honestly think, like, I think that fight and the Taha fight are my 2 most anticipated fights.
Really?
Yeah, I love that fight.
I want the main event to happen just because I want to see Ciryl Gane choke out Tai Tuivasa. Everybody's going to go crazy, but we'll get there. All right, so for this next fight, we've got 2 debutants. I'm surprised this fight's all the way on the main card. Meanwhile, you got Imavov and Buckley at the bottom, but whatever. We've got William Gomis versus Jarno Errens. Gomis is 10-2-0, 25 years old, 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach. And I've got him training out of MMA Factory. And then Errens on the other side is 13-3-1. He's 27 years old, 5'11", and I've got him training out of UFD Gym as well, along with Abu Magomedov. So I'll start this one off, and yeah, I'm on Errens here. I'll say it right away. I'm on Errens. Pretty big dog. I think it's only climbing now. I got him at like plus 185, plus 190 now on Bet Online, and this is what it came down to for me. Like, there's a clear path for both of these guys, like a very clear path in my opinion. Errens has abysmal takedown defense. It's just awful. And Gomis has shown some good grappling. And then on the feet, Gomis is just hands down, low output, not really doing much. Meanwhile, you look at Errens, and Errens is a really good striker. Like, he's very crisp, very straight, keeps everything tight. I feel like defensively wise, he's much more defensively sound than Gomis is. So if we're on the feet, I have to favor Errens. And then you're telling me, yeah, but Gomis can take him down. Yeah, I agree he can take him down. Do I think he's going to hold him down? Not really. And you look at it, like, Errens has 5 submission wins too. So like, he's not a scrub. He's got a really nice back take. Once he's on your back, good luck getting him off. That body triangle's diesel. Like, I like Errens here at these odds, like, because, you know, like, I can't bet on a striker. I mean, he's a striker, right? Gomis is primarily a striker, but you call him a grappler because that's what he does better, in my opinion. So I can't bet on a guy like that. Errens at plus 185, plus 190. I like it. He's got the better striking. I'm going to be concerned the whole time with the takedowns, but as long as he can get back up, should be good for this fight. John, what are you thinking?
Yeah, you know, if I had to pick a side to bet, I think the value would be on the dog here, just because it's like, you know, going back to like when we talked about Contender Series, a lot of these fighters where it's like they're both low level, they both like don't really have a super clear advantage over the other. Like, I just think it's going to play out competitively. So why wouldn't you? You know, you would want the plus 190 or whatever in that situation, right? Like, I don't know if I'll get there. I might get there come Saturday, so I might be joining you. It's just one that, you know, I didn't really have a strong take on. I'm like, I guess you can bet Errens just because he's a big plus money. Like, what does this Gomis guy have to really warrant being minus 220 or whatever?
Only the
UFC
wrestling
debut.
Only the wrestling.
Like, and honestly, like, in my opinion, this guy is like a budget O'Day Osborne at featherweight, right? This fight's at featherweight, I think.
Honestly, I'm not even sure. Yeah, featherweight.
Yeah, so he's like the featherweight Walmart version of O'Day Osborne. Just like the way that he fights. Like, he really does remind me of him. I think he is explosive when he does let his hands go. He tries like this no-look head kick like multiple times if you watch his fights. Like, it looks very stupid. I think he's like trying to trick his opponent, like that they won't see it coming because he's like looking at the ground away from them. I think it's an awful idea. I think somebody who is sharp enough is going to counter him and chin this man. I just don't know if Errens is going to be the guy. You know, this guy's fought really low level of competition, and that's a pretty big concern for me, especially against a guy like Gomis, who at least seems explosive enough. You mentioned like he does have a couple decent takedowns that he showed on the regional scene. So it's like, I guess he deserves to be a favorite. I don't think it should be this big of a favorite, but being in front of the home crowd, you know, he'll probably get a little home rub if this does go the full 15 minutes. But But yeah, so I mean, to long story short, I don't trust either of these guys. I think probably value on the underdog. I just don't know if I'm going to chase that value because I like multiple underdogs this week, and I just feel better about those ones.
Yeah, I mean, this one, there's a clear path for the favorite too, so I definitely can't blame you for staying off. But for this next fight, we've got two guys who I think are actually really similar in terms of how they fight. We've got Nasrat Haqparast versus John Makdessi. Nasrat is 13-5-0. He's 27 years old, 5'10", 72-inch reach, and I don't have anything else in my notes, so we're going to go with TriStar Gym. Although it says TriStar for both of these guys. I was just listening to a Makdessi interview today, and I think it's him who left, but I don't remember. It's him, right? Right, so he's not there anymore. I'm not sure where he is. Do you know, John?
I do, because I actually listened to the same interview. I just don't remember, so I'll look it up real quick.
Well, yeah, either way, 37 years old, so he's 10 years older, 5'8", 2 inches shorter, 68-inch reach, 4-inch reach disadvantage. And yeah, John, any news?
MMA Lab. I'm pretty sure
cool.
that was the first thing that came up. And I think he did say that in the interview as well. But yeah, I mean, so spoiler alert, this is another underdog that I feel a lot better about than Errens. So I bet John Makdessi here at plus 198 on Bet Online. I think that's still available. That's like the best across the market. At least it was as of like an hour ago. I just don't think that there is any scenario where Makdessi at plus 200 against Nasrat Haqparast looks like a bad bet. I mean, sure, can he get knocked out? You know, yeah, absolutely. The guy's getting older. He's been knocked out before. Like, that wouldn't be the craziest thing. Outside of Haqparast knocking him out clean early in this fight, like, there's got to be value on John Makdessi here. Like, John Makdessi, I think, clearly has proven, you know, against Bahamondes in that last fight, people just think, like, once fighters get over a certain age, it's like they lose all skills and credibility. That's just not the case, especially with a guy like John Makdessi, who is a credentialed striker, strong jab. You know, he has a lot of tricks, very high fight IQ in terms of the striking. And he's going up against Haqparast, who's a one-dimensional boxer. Like, this guy, we've seen him exposed already. He came in with a bunch of hype after dropping his UFC debut, knocked out a couple people, and he was a big favorite against Drew Dober, of all people, who's one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, who I think is one of the best boxers in this division. And Dober was a big underdog to Nasrat Haqparast. So, and then we've seen it, you know, Dan Hooker out-wrestled this guy badly. And then, of course, Bobby Green, King Bobby Green, we all bet Bobby Green. I don't know if you were on the train as well, but it seemed like all of MMA Twitter was on the Bobby Green value against Nasrat, and he just outclassed him for 15 minutes. Like, Nasrat is a good striker, but he has nothing. There's nothing extra to his game. He's a southpaw striker, pretty much only boxes, doesn't mix in a lot of leg kicks. He has a powerful left hand, but it's like when he can't get his range and his timing down, like we saw in that Bobby Green fight, who just beat him to the punch with his jab a bunch. Like, when he can't do that, he's just getting his face jabbed off, and he's just one step behind. And I could see a similar scenario even with John Makdessi being the older fighter. Like, he's not going to blow you away with his speed, but I could see him, you know, really having success with his jab, mixing in, you know, the leg kicks a little bit as well against Haqparast. So I think there's got to be value here, and what I think is going to play out as like a competitive kickboxing match, likely for 15 minutes. It's just like we need Makdessi not to get knocked out, and then I think we're holding a valuable ticket. So I backed him for a unit at plus 198. Like I said, I mean, I just don't see how you can make Haqparast a minus 240 or whatever favorite in this matchup.
We're on the same side, John. So I haven't bet this one yet because I've been hesitant. Because I think, like I mentioned when I first introduced them, like, I think we're looking at two very similar fighters with just a 10-year age gap, and like Makdessi's a bit smaller, but otherwise everything they do is super similar. Two primary boxers, like strikers. They're on the feet. Neither of them are really wrestling. And like, so you mentioned thinking that Makdessi, you know, his main issue here is maybe he'll get knocked out, right? So I pulled it up. Nasrat's only knocked out one person in the UFC, actually, and it was Joaquin Silva, who I'm not sure if he's still in the UFC anymore, but that was his only KO win. And then I also pulled up our guy Makdessi, and he's only been knocked out twice. Lando Venata, and Donald Cerrone. So not the worst knockout losses. And I honestly don't have much to add to what you said. Nasrat just doesn't do like anything else other than strike. So like if they're both good strikers, how is he possibly going to be a minus 200? What is it now? 50-40 favorite?
Yeah.
233. Like I agree. I think it's too steep. I don't see a clear path, because if you tell me we're going to decision, I'm not sure who wins. So I think that McDessie is super live. I like those odds too, and I'm going to probably play him too. My one concern is like I was looking at his wins, and other than Bahamondes, it's literally nobody's. Jesus Pinedo, Ross Pearson, Abel Trujillo, like none of these guys are left in the UFC. Mehdi Baghdad, Shane Campbell, Rene Forte, Darren Cruikshank, Sam Stout. You know, what do all those names have in common? None of them are in the UFC anymore. So there's that concern, but he did look great against Bahamondes. I'm super high on Bahamondes, so for me, that's a good look. And yeah, I'm going to be with you on the dog, I think.
Let's do it.
So, we'll move on to the next fight. And I'll admit, I don't have the craziest read on this one. I am on a dog, but let's get into it. We got Alessio Di Chirico versus Roman Kopylov. Di Chirico is 13-6-0, 32 years old, 6 feet tall with a 74-inch reach. Kopylov on the other side is 8-2-0, 31 years old, 6 foot tall as well, 75-inch reach. And I do not have his camp. I wasn't able to look this one up in time. Do you know, John?
Who, Di Chirico?
Nah, Kopylov.
Oh, I have no clue.
Probably somewhere in Russia, but
yeah, I have no clue on him.
Yeah, so I'll start this one off. I think these two guys are actually fairly similar. You know, we have our issues with Kopylov. I know a lot of people bring up the fact that he got submitted by what's his name? Carl Roberson, someone who should not have been submitting him. But yeah, I mean, for me, this is pretty like I think we're going to be striking for the whole fight. I don't think there's really going to be grappling involved. And I like Roman Kopylov. I do. I think that he's got the better striking. He's got a Samba background. So if anyone's going to mix in some kind of grappling, I would assume it's him, although I'm not expecting it from either guy. It's hard to really even get a read on Di Chirico because, like, what? We saw him lose in his last fight against who was that, John?
He got knocked out by Abdul Razak Al Hassan in the first round.
I think he had a fight since then. I think.
Did he?
No, I'm wrong.
Sure?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got knocked out, and then before that, he knocked out Joaquin Buckley in round number 1. But, like, I don't take much from that. You know, quick knockouts, you run that back 10 times, they're probably not going to happen every time. I think that if you run back that fight 10 times, Buckley, in my opinion, probably wins more than he loses. But who knows? Yeah, I just like Kopylov. I don't think that Chirico is really going to show enough to really, like, he can't mix it up. He's not really grappling much. Last time he even got any takedowns was against Kevin Holland in 2019. He's had 4 fights since then, not a single takedown. So, yeah, I like Kopylov here. I'm not super confident on it. I got him at I want to say plus 100 on the dot. Best you can get now is minus 105. You know, you can still play that. I like the plus money, but, yeah, my pick is Kopylov, just not much conviction. How about you, John?
Yeah, I really don't have much conviction on this one either way. There's actually a lot of strong takes out there on this fight, like specifically, I think more so on the Di Chirico side. I can't get there with this guy, man. Like, he's just super untrustworthy to me. Like, you mentioned the win over Buckley, right? Like, I think that was his only win over his last 5 fights. Like, the dude is just very untrustworthy to me. And I think a lot of people bet him against Al Hassan as well. And he just got deaded in the first round. So, I mean, I just don't trust this guy whatsoever. He's another one of those guys we talked about earlier where he's low volume on the feet. He has a little bit of power, but it's not like he's overwhelming guys with his power. And he does average, over 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, but you hit on it. It's like he hasn't landed a takedown over his last 4 fights. And part of that was because his last 2 fights ended in the first round, but still it seems like he's less aggressive in terms of looking for the takedowns than he was early on in the UFC career. And I think he should look for takedowns here against Kopylov, who seems to be a powerful striker. But the issue, like why I'm not jumping on the Kopylov side is because for starters, I would just need a better price. And on top of that, like Kopylov, I could say some similar things. Like the dude seems like he's pretty low volume himself. Like he doesn't he definitely has power. Like coming into the UFC, he was an 8-0 prospect, 7 of his wins coming by knockout. We know he can hurt guys, but then, you know, in the UFC, it's like he didn't really let his hands go. There seems to be maybe some cardio concerns, maybe some defensive grappling concerns. You know, and he did get the knockdown against Duraev. I was actually at that fight. That was UFC 267 in Fight Island, which was awesome.
You were there live?
I was, yes.
At Fight Island?
Yeah, it was amazing in Abu Dhabi. Yep. I actually stayed at the hotel where the fighter stayed at. So
Etihad Arena? No, that's the arena, right?
No, it's the I don't know what it's called.
You don't remember the hotel?
Oh no, the hotel. I stayed at the W. But so most of the fighters, I don't know if most of them stayed there, but most of them, they don't stay at and maybe I don't know if this is how they do it all the time, but most of them didn't stay at where they were doing like the promotional shoots and the interviews and stuff like that. That was at a separate hotel. So they would go to that hotel for it, but most of them would stay at a different one just to kind of get away from it, I guess. But it was cool because I actually ran into Amanda Hebos.
Nice.
I took a really quick story. I took a short flight there, barely slept for like a couple hours in my hotel room, wake up the next morning, text my buddy to meet up. And I'm like walking down into the lobby. Like I just woke up on no sleep, and Hebos and her manager are like walking by. And I was just like shocked. And I just like mumbled, I'm like, "Good luck tonight, Amanda," or something like that. And she was like, "Oh, thanks." And I was like, I should have asked for a picture. So I didn't get a picture, but it was still pretty cool. But yeah, I was there to see that fight against Duraev, where Kopylov obviously showed off the power, but you know, he wasn't able to finish Duraev. And then even at times getting outstruck by Duraev, who has kind of been exposed since then, is kind of a red flag for me. So it's like, I think Kopylov probably has more upside on DraftKings, just because I think his power, he's got more power than DiCirico, but I don't really trust either of these guys. So it just seems like an easy pass for me.
I'm glad you said you froze up when you saw Rebus too, because when I went to UFC Austin, I was in the airport and like I was walking and I just see the guy with like a UFC backpack. So I'm like, "Yo, you going to the fights?" And he's like, "Oh, nah, my friend's fighting." He's like, and then I didn't understand him. He asked me if I was fighting. I thought he meant, "Am I going?" And I was like, yeah. And he's like, "You're on the card?" And I was like, "No, bro, no, I'm not on the card."
You should have just played it off. You're like, "Yeah, making my debut."
So then this guy goes, "Yo, Court." And it's Court McGee, like right in front of us, who turns around. He's like, "What?" He's like, "This guy's going to the fights." And like Court like shakes my hand, and I'm just looking at him like,
yeah.
I totally wanted a picture and just froze and didn't do it, but
it happens.
Back to this fight. Yeah, just to build on what you were saying, one other thing. In regards to the takedown defense, you know, DiCirico, sure, he has shot, but Duraev, you know, has good grappling. And he went 1-9 against Kopylov. I just pulled up the numbers. Yep. So, and Kopylov's sitting with an 83% takedown defense. You know, you got to like it. Small sample size, so take it as you may. But we can move on to the co-main event. I'm going to let you start this one because I'm super biased. But we've got Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. Whittaker is 23, 6-0, 31 years old, 6 foot tall, 74-inch reach. And I'm going to go with PMA Super Martial Arts Center because I don't have anything better, unless you know, John. And then Vettori is 18, 4-1, 28 years old. So he is 3 years younger, 6 feet tall as well with the 74-inch reach. And he's training out of King's MMA. So, John, what are you thinking for this fight?
Yeah, so I'm curious. You said you're super biased, so I don't know which guy you picked or bet on, but I'll just say this: I'm probably going to be betting Marvin Vettori before the end of the week. So I haven't bet him yet, but just putting that out there. And it's like, obviously, I think skill for skill, Robert Whittaker is better. I think there's no really debating that, but I think there's multiple reasons why there's value on Marvin Vettori here. For starters, you know, you mentioned it earlier. I was saving it for this fight, but Marvin Vettori's got that dog in him. Like, there is no dispute whatsoever. Like, he has clearly got that dog in him. So I just always like backing him as an underdog because he's one of those guys that you know is going to fight for your money. Like, I bet him against Izzy, which I think played out better than the odds suggested, but he also didn't really have a sweat to win that fight.
If you ask Vettori, he won that fight, John.
Yeah, so. Despite what he thought, he didn't win that fight. But this is a guy who, over his last 10 fights, I believe, his only 2 losses came against the champ, Israel Adesanya. Like, Marvin Vettori is just super well-rounded. Like, I think he's a difficult matchup for anybody. He's not a walkover opponent. And you're giving just about the same odds that he was against Adesanya to Robert Whittaker. I think that's wrong. You know, Robert Whittaker, another guy that I bet against Izzy and lost, was basically the same odds against Izzy as Vettori was. And so why would Whittaker be that big of a favorite against Marvin Vettori? Like, it just doesn't make, you're basically saying Whittaker is on the same level in terms of this matchup than Izzy is. And I think that's wrong. I think Vettori can be competitive in the striking. I think neither guy is probably going to have much success in terms of the grappling, but if either guy does, I think it could be potentially Vettori just being able to stick to him a little bit, maybe land a takedown or 2, even though he probably won't be able to control him much. But I am expecting primarily a kickboxing match for 15 minutes. And in that scenario, I think Vettori's live. He can match the pace of Robert Whittaker. He can potentially hurt Robert Whittaker, who at times the durability has been a bit of a question mark. We've seen him rocked multiple times. Obviously, he's been, hurt. He's been through a lot of wars. There's just so many reasons. Like, we just need Whittaker to not be on his best day for Vettori to be live in this fight. We need Whittaker to maybe take another step down in terms of the durability. And Marvin Vettori is super live in this fight. And even if neither of those things happen, I think Marvin Vettori is live in this fight. Like, I think it's going to be a close fight either way. So it's like, I'm going to take the dog here. It's just a matter of when, because I think there's a lot of confidence on Rob. And I totally get it. The dude's one of the best in the sport. But I just think there's multiple reasons that I laid out why I could see Vettori playing off as a live underdog in the plus 200 range.
Yeah, man. So I'm biased towards Rob for sure. I'm a Bobby Knuckles guy, true and true. There's a reason when he fought Israel Adesanya, I didn't bet it really. I bet only the over because I knew that Izzy was more than likely going to win that fight. But I love Rob. It's the same reason I didn't bet Max Holloway Volk 3. Huge Max fan. So I think that the smartest bet here is, in fact, the Marvin Vettori money line. I got to say it off the bat. I think they're super close. I think that I would push back on one thing that you said. I do think that if Vettori is going to find success, I think he's going to have to grind a little on the fence, mix in some kind of grappling. Because I think that if we're just striking, I kind of favor Whittaker. I think he's a bit more of a technical striker. I feel like Vittori's a bit more meat and potatoes. Kind of depends on closing that gap, getting in close, and kind of muscling guys too. Whereas Whittaker more just moves around, picks his spots, right? That said, like I said, I think Vettori is probably the smart play here. I think it's a 50-50 fight, and the odds are not 50-50 or even close. But I did play Whittaker by decision because I do still think that he probably wins this fight. I think he's the better guy unless he's getting taken down, which I don't really think is going to happen here. So I thought Whittaker by decision. I got it at plus 100. Thought it was a good price. I personally don't really see a finish here. It's a 3-round fight. Neither of these guys are really potent finishers, and both guys are extremely durable. So I don't really see a finish happening. So Rob by decision, I like it. I can't blame anyone for the Vettori money line, though. But I would say you should probably hop on soon. It looks like it's going the other way now, or it has been the last few days at least.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of movement, and I was kind of discouraged. I didn't think that many people were on the Vettori side, but I guess maybe I'm not alone here.
Makes sense, man. But all right, so we can move on to our main event now, and this one's going to be a lot of fun. So we've got Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa. Ciryl Gane is 10-1-0, 32 years old, 60. Oh my God, I almost said 64 years old. 6'4", 83-inch reach, training out of MMA Factory. Tuivasa on the other side is 15-3-0, 29 years old, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. So he's, what is that? He's 3 years younger, 2 inches shorter, and he's got a 8-inch reach disadvantage. So I'll start this one. I mean, like, there's really not much to break down. There's a reason the odds are the way they are, right? You got Ciryl Gane, who's an extremely technical striker. Could have won that last fight, but Francis Ngannou became Francis Ngannou. And I don't see it for Tuivasa. Like, he's gonna have to land a lucky shot, and I'm not betting on a guy who needs to land a lucky shot to win the fight, and that's his only path. I don't think there's any way he wins a decision. And I'll be short and quick. I played Ciryl Gane. He's parlayed. Sure, forget about that though. I played Ciryl Gane inside the distance. That's probably my biggest play on this fight in particular. I got it at minus 160. Played it for 1.6 units. I just think that over 5 rounds, I think that a finish is live for Ciryl Gane. I think that he's better literally everywhere this fight goes except power. And I also think that he's got a chip on his shoulder, right? He went into that title fight with a ton of hype. I think even Dana White thought he was going to win. And he lost. And I don't think that he's going to be one of these guys who comes off a loss and just keeps losing. Like, I think he's going to come in this fight with a chip on his shoulder, not looking for just a decision. So I do think he gets it done inside the distance. I've been saying it all week on Twitter, mostly a joke, but I did play it. Ciryl Gane by sub. I got it at like plus 420 or something like that. Played it, I think, for a quarter unit. Nothing crazy. Look, he's done it, twice in the UFC against super low caliber competition, sure. But Tuivasa did get subbed by, I think it was Marcin Tybura, right? Tybura isn't a scrub. He's not a can, but he's also not a huge submission guy. So I think it's more than likely Ciryl Gane does not get a sub. But for plus 420, it's a play I wanted to make. So I am on that. John, what are you thinking for the main event? Anything different?
Well, I will add, so I took a little nibble at plus 650 Gane by submission on FanDuel, which I think 550 might still be there. I haven't checked in a while, but yeah, I played it for like a third of a unit, I think, over on FanDuel. And it's not because like you said, like, I don't think he's going to submit him, but it's like, if he chooses to, it's basically whatever he decides to do. I think he can win this fight. If he plays the super technical, stay at range and just outpoint him for 25 minutes, then he can absolutely do that. If he goes to the takedowns, goes to the grappling, he can absolutely submit him. If he really starts to get aggressive and pours on the volume, he can absolutely knock him out. It's just a matter of whatever he wants to do, I think he can do here. And on the Tuivasa side, like, I love Tuivasa. Everybody does. I mean, you can't not root for this guy, and I'll probably be rooting for him here. I definitely will be rooting for him here because I've never been a Ciryl Gane fan. I always kind of give him stuff for being a boring point fighter, which I don't think this one's going to play out like that because a lot of the same reasons you said, but also because Tuivasa, I think, is not going to let it. Like, I think it's not going to be like the Rosenstruck fight where Rosenstruck was just too scared to take chances and let his hands go. Like, I think Tuivasa is going to just move forward and be like, hey, you might be able to kill me or submit me, but I'm going to make you prove it. I think that's how Tuivasa is going to fight. He only knows one way to fight. So it's like, can he land a lucky punch? Sure. But I just think historically, Gane is very good at limiting the damage coming back the other way. So I can't really put much faith into my guy Tuivasa, even though I'll be rooting for Bam Bam. Like I said, only bet I have is a very, very small stab on the Gane by submission prop.
Yeah, you killed me with those odds. I played it too early, but I liked what you said with Tuivasa. He's not going to give him the type of fight where it's like a clean fight. Like, that's for sure. Like, look at the Derek Lewis fight, right? But yeah, we're both on Ciryl Gane, both by sub, hopefully. And that's a wrap, guys. That's a full card. Thank you all for tuning in. We got 7 live viewers in the chat now. Thank you, guys. Thank you, anyone who's tuned in or is tuning in the future. You guys know where to find me, at Couch Warrior Pod on Twitter. This is my channel. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like the video. I am going to be going live later tonight in an hour and a half with Pat over at Addicted to Combat. So make sure to tune into that. Should be a lot of fun, late night show. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to do a Mike's Bet tomorrow, but on Friday, I am going to do our Dana White Contender Series breakdown for Week 7. I've already got my picks, so I'm hyped for that one. And John, why don't you tell the people where to find you, man?
Yeah, first off, impressive getting on the contenders that quickly. I mean, if respect the grind, it is a grind.
Let me ask you, John, have you looked yet at next week?
No. I mean, I looked at the names. That's it. I haven't. I typically wait until like basically I'm done with the content for the UFC that week. So like I'll be editing my video probably up through tomorrow since I did this show tonight. Usually I do it Wednesday nights, but I'll probably do my video by tomorrow at noon. So basically once I'm done with that, then I'll start looking into Contender Series stuff. So I haven't looked at anything yet, but respect the grind. Not many people understand how big of a grind it is, not just doing the UFC stuff every week, but also Contender Series content as well. So shout out to you. You guys could find me at John Kelly DFS on Twitter. I'm always tweeting a bunch of nonsense. And then also on YouTube at John Kelly DFS, I do a breakdown like this, but it's just me. And I keep it to about 20 minutes or so, depending on how long the card is. Talk DraftKings, talk betting as well. And then, of course, I do stuff with Contender Series like Mike does. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, and best of luck this weekend, bro.
Yes, sir. Let's get those bookies. But thank you guys for tuning in, and have a good one. Good luck, everybody.